Okay, great. So I'm Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, represent the 9th Congressional District, and we've invited many of you all of you that have contacted us about some of the programs that we were hoping would provide relief, and I'm sure some of you have gotten that. Let me just begin by saying I know that this coronavirus has affected everybody's life. Whether you're staying home, whether you're working, whether you have some loved one or yourself that isn't feeling well. And I'm sure when I'm looking at you, though I can't see all of you, that there's a lot of stress and anxiety and worry and fear that accompanies this pandemic. What we want to do is try and at least answer some of the questions. The Congress has spent allocated, not all spent yet, but is allocated nearly $4 trillion. And fair enough for those of you who may want to understand where all that money is going to go. The intention, certainly in the House of Representatives, was to make sure that the vast bulk of it, some, of course, to hospitals and to first responders and et cetera, but that the bulk of the relief money would go to everyday people, like I'm sure most of you on this town hall tonight. That it would help maintain people working, even if they couldn't go to the job. The relationship between the employer and the employee would remain intact for the moment that we do reopen and you could go back to work. Our emphasis was on small businesses, truly small businesses, which are really the heartbeat of our communities. So we want to answer as many questions, and I'm so pleased that we really have experts with us tonight. You're going to have an opportunity to learn more about how these dollars are being spent and put to work. And first, you're going to hear from Bo Steiner, who is the Illinois District Director for the Small Business Administration. Thank you, Bo. Bo has worked very closely with members of my staff on a daily basis since the beginning of this crisis, and I'm so glad to have his steady hand in charge of Illinois operations for the Small Business Administration. And there's no question that the role of initiatives like the Payroll Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program have seen significant problems. The rollouts have not been as smooth as we wanted. Of course, that goes also and still goes on with the unemployment insurance, especially for 1099 workers. But I've been very outspoken at the need for the Trump administration to do better and for these initiatives to appropriately protect small businesses. We were thinking of mom and pops, the neighborhood businesses that often fell through the cracks, especially during that first round. We'll hear more about the second round. However, throughout all of the ups and downs during this the last months, Bo Steiner has been there. He's been ready and willing to take our questions, to take our calls, to answer what the constituents have been asking. So Bo has done a great job with the hands that have been dealt to all of us. And I really look forward myself also to hearing from him. And second, we're going to hear after the Illinois director of the Department of the Small Business Administration, we're going to hear from someone who's become a friend of mine, Geri Aglipay, who actually was a guest of mine at the State of the Union. And she's with Small Business Majority. This is an organization that represents small businesses. She serves as the National Women's Entrepreneurship Manager and the Senior Outreach Manager for the Midwest and Greater Chicago. And she is she's absolutely just a wealth of knowledge on small business resources and the issues that you're facing as small business employers and employees. So Geri's going to walk us through some of the external resources and support that small businesses may want to look into as you work through the COVID-19 crisis. So I am really happy now to turn things over to Bo Steiner. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Congressman. I really appreciate you having me today for sure. I know this is a really important topic and really important to many of the business owners here. So thank you, and thanks to you and all of your staff for supporting getting the information out for these programs. They can be really impactful, and I know everybody wants to have the right information to help them navigate the various options that are there. So I appreciate all the work that your team has been doing to get the word out. It's been super helpful.
Thanks.
And thanks to everybody who's on the call today. I know many of you are trying to figure out, how do I make these programs work for me, work for my business? And hopefully we can answer some of your questions today to at least, get you pointed in the right direction, or give you information that you can use to make future decisions in a more informed manner. So again, thank you very much for being here. So what I wanted to do was run through just kind of an overview of our programs, just so that we can level set, because many of you may have different levels of awareness of the different programs that SBA is providing for small businesses through our resources. So as Congresswoman mentioned, last week, the Congress passed an additional appropriation for the Paycheck Protection Program, for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance, to provide more resources so that SBA could meet the needs of more small businesses as they deal with the impacts of the coronavirus. So the good news is that we've got more resources there. Paycheck Protection Program reopened for application on Monday, and my understanding in speaking with internally here at SBA is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program will also be opening up at some point in the near future. So again, people have additional opportunities to apply for these programs. The Paycheck Protection Program is a loan program, loans up to $10 million that can be fully forgiven if you meet the requirements of the program. It's an SBA guaranteed loan, so you apply with a private sector bank, and it's 100% forgivable if you meet certain criteria, including that at least 75% of the proceeds are used for payroll costs and you maintain your head count. Many of you probably have questions. What does forgiveness look like, and how do I, if I can't bring on all my people or I don't spend the 75%, what does that look like? We are still pulling together the policy and the guidance for you as small business owners to navigate that. Just know that we're supposed to have it in the next couple of days so that you'll have the information you need to make the right decisions in the coming weeks when you go to seek forgiveness. As far as the eligibility for the program, it's really any small business or 501c3, 501c19 nonprofit with fewer than 500 employees. Now, there are certain caveats. If you're in the hospitality industry with NAICS Code 7.2, there are some relaxation of affiliation. So there are some different criteria that we can use. It could be a revenue-based criteria. But basically what the program rules say is that we're going to use the least restrictive criteria that apply to your business. So if you meet the small business criteria through revenue, we'll use that. If you meet it by 500 employees, we use that. But again, you're going to work with your lender to make sure that you meet those eligibility criteria. When we talk about small business, we're also including self-employed, sole proprietors, and independent contractors. So as a self-employed person, you are eligible to apply on your own. Note that the way the loan amount is determined is by your average monthly payroll. So basically what you're doing is a 12-month look back on your payroll costs, which encompasses both your cash compensation as well as non-cash benefits like healthcare contributions, retirement contributions, forms of leave, state and local taxes, those sorts of things that are expenses that you have for your employees can be considered payroll costs. Take an average of the 12-month period. It could be 2019. It could be a 12-month look back from today. Seasonal employees have a different calculation, but basically 2.5 times that monthly average is your payroll costs. I just note on this slide that 1099 independent contractors are not considered payroll costs for the purposes of loan calculation nor for forgiveness. So just want to plant that seed in everybody's head. Other eligibility considerations that you need to keep in mind is the business must have been in operation on February 15th, 2020, and either had employees for whom you paid salaries and payroll taxes or paid independent contractors as reported on Form 1099 MISC. For sole proprietors, again, you would have to be able to demonstrate, and we have guidelines and tools that you can use to provide this evidence, but provide evidence that you were in business as an independent contractor or self-employed prior to that February 15th date. Typically, we'll recommend that people go to their wherever they have their existing banking relationship, their business banking relationship, as the first point of contact for applying for the PPP. However, we also understand that many banks are no longer accepting applications or may not be participating in the program. To accommodate that, we have set up a portal on our website at sba.gov/paycheck protection, where you can find local participating lenders in the PPP program. Note also that we are working with a number of online lenders who are also supporting the program nationally, who may also be resources for you. If you're having a hard time finding a lender who's participating, I encourage you to either go to SBA's website or to work with one of our small business development centers or SCORE, as they also have a network of lenders they are keeping tabs on, and they can inform you as to who's accepting applications. And as I mentioned, we reopened the application window again on Monday. To apply, it's a 2-page application, SBA Form 2483. And as I mentioned, the loan amount is based on payroll expenses. Average monthly payroll times 2.5 is your maximum loan amount. There's a great document on the Treasury website, how to calculate loan amounts, that will help you based on your individual circumstance, whether you're a sole proprietor, you're an S Corp, a nonprofit, how you apply, how you calculate that max loan amount, also the documents that you would need to provide. So just again, recommend that you go to that link and check out that website. It's a really great tool. As I mentioned, qualified payroll costs include cash and non-cash benefits, and 1099 contractor expenses do not qualify as payroll costs for the loan calculations. From the standpoint of use of proceeds, so basically just kind of take a step back. You apply for the loan with the private sector lender. They forward a package to the SBA. We approve it. At that point, once you're approved, then the lender has 10 calendar days to make first disbursement, with full disbursement no later than 30 days. That first disbursement begins the 8-week period at which we'll look at for forgiveness. So during that 8-week period, that's where you're supposed to meet the criteria for forgiveness, which are at least 75% of the proceeds used for payroll costs, and you maintain headcount. As I mentioned, additional guidance is forthcoming in the formulas and how the banks will look at it and how you'll look at it as the applicant, the borrower. But you can also use the proceeds of the PPP loan for things like mortgage interest payments, rent payments, utility payments, interest payments on other debt that was incurred before February 15th, and to refinance an EIDL loan made between January 31st and April 3rd. So many different items that you can use the proceeds for, but just note that the key number that you need to keep in mind is that the payroll costs, and you can find a whole list of payroll costs in the interim final rule, must be at least 75% or more, as well as the headcount, consistent headcount to receive that full forgiveness. Get a common question: can I delay receiving the loan because right now we're in shelter in place? Or, can I get a waiver for the 8-week period of, spending the 75% on payroll costs in order to receive full forgiveness? At this time, there is no relaxation of that 8-week period. And I think the Congresswoman mentioned kind of the core of the program was that you're keeping your employees on payroll so that once we can get back to business, that those folks are ready to roll and ready to come back to work and serve your customers and help support your business. So as of right now, there is no relaxation on that 8-week period. I know I want to run through this because I know everybody's got lots of questions. So next, I'm going to touch on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program is administered by the SBA, and it's a loan program, part of our disaster portfolio, where you apply to SBA, we underwrite it, we service these loans. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance was part of the CARES Act, which provided for funding to get money in the hands of small business owners as quickly as possible. So what we've done is we've created a streamlined portal where businesses could go in and apply for both at the same time. Now, we are not currently accepting new applications. We did just get a new tranche of funding for the program, though, and we expect the portal to open up again. But right now, if you went to SBA's website, you would not be able to apply. I'll touch on the people who have already applied in a moment. As far as the program itself, the EIDL is a working capital program with loans up to $2 million and low interest rates at 3.75% for business, 2.75% for nonprofits with terms up to 30 years. The advance is an advance on an EIDL loan of up to $10,000 based on the number of employees. So one employee is $1,000, two employees, $2,000, all the way up to 10 employees at $10,000. It is a forgivable loan or grant dispersed within days of completed application. And I say it that way because if you receive an economic injury disaster loan, the amount of that advance will be reduced from the principal of your loan. If you are declined for the loan, you keep the advance. So it is a grant to you as a small business owner to help you with those urgent needs. Again, businesses with fewer than 500 employees, most private nonprofits are eligible, as well as the business must have experienced substantial impact due to COVID-19 and have been in business as of 1/31/2020, which was the date that disaster was declared. So those are the criteria. For those of you that did apply, we got kind of two different groups. One applied right away through our initial portal. If you did apply right away and you did not go back in through our streamlined portal to reapply, and I say reapply, it's not really a reapplication. You're just updating information in the system to make sure we've got it, including your bank information, things like that. But if you went in, you were able to both update your EIDL application as well as apply for the EIDL advance. You should be good to go. Even if you did that, your position in line, so it's processed on a first in, first out basis, your place in line was held. So that date timestamp of when you click submit for your initial application is where you fall in the queue. If you did not go back in, if you had applied and you have a 200 number loan application, over the coming week, you should receive an email that will ask you to go into a portal specific to you and update your loan application. Basically, again, that will streamline the process for you, help us to process that loan as quickly as possible. You will not, again, lose your place in line. You will still be as part of that queue for the folks that applied right off the bat. I think we opened up applications for Illinois on the March 19th. So wherever you fell in that March 19th to March 30th period, you'll still be there. So that is the EIDL and the EIDL Advance. I also want to touch on SBA Debt Relief. So if you're a business owner and you have an SBA loan, it could be a 7A loan or a 504 loan. Those are two different flavors of SBA loan programs. SBA will pay the principal, interest, and SBA loan fees for current 7A and 504 loans, meaning for 6 months, we're going to take care of your loan, give you some working capital breathing room, some cash flow breathing room for that 6-month period. In addition, if you apply for and are issued a new 7A or 504 loan in advance before September 27th, you can also receive that debt relief, meaning SBA will pay the principal and interest and fees for that loan for a period of 6 months. So it's a really nice way to help businesses who are facing challenges related to COVID-19 deal with the working capital and the cash flow challenges they face. It should be transparent to you, but if you have questions, please reach out to your lender for more guidance on the program. Last debt program I'll mention is the Express Bridge Loan Program. This is for businesses who may work with an existing SBA Express lender. It's a shortened path, shortened application for a bridge loan of up to $25,000 to help offset those working capital costs. This is it's basically a term loan up to 7 years, rates negotiated with the lender that can just give you that or meet your working capital needs due to the issues you're facing around the coronavirus. And then the last thing I want to touch on is just assistance from SBA and our partners. We fund a whole network of entities that provide business counseling and assistance to small businesses. They can help you both with the application process and determining which programs might be appropriate for your business, as well as help you strategize about things you need to do from an operational standpoint, things that you might be able to change in order to better serve your customers and navigate the challenges that the COVID-19 presents to your organization. So Illinois Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, Women's Business Development Center, and the Veteran Business Outreach Centers are all great resources. They have great people on staff, and they can help you very much during this time. So that is all I wanted to push out to everybody, kind of level set everybody's understanding of what we're doing right now, and I look forward to answering everybody's questions. So thanks again for the time today, Chakowski.
I'm going to go right into hearing from Geri Aglipay from the Small Business Majority, and then we'll take questions at the end of both of the presentations. Okay?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I just want to give a little bit of background about Small Business Majority, our polling and research with small business owners, and our hopes for the policy agenda, as well as enhance some of the resources, add on to what Bo acknowledged as well with our wonderful partners at the Small Business Development Centers, with Business Development Centers as well. About Small Business Majority, we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization. We were founded 15 years ago, and we have offices across the country, including our federal office in Washington, D.C., who is working with the Congresswoman's staff and others on addressing this issues for small businesses at this very challenging time for the pandemic. With our research polling with small businesses across the country, what we found is about 1 in 3 small business owners have actually said they've already laid off staff furloughed employees or reduced their workforce. Not only have they been severely impacted, but their employees have as well. And as the Congresswoman noted earlier, many of these small businesses look at their workforce and their employees as sort of second families as well. So it's very disheartening for these owners to have this challenging time and furlough their employees or let them go as well. We are thankful as a nonprofit organization for congressional support for small businesses thus far, especially the most recent funding for the PPP and EIDL with a carve out of $60 billion specifically for those community financial institutions, which we would hope would go towards the truly small businesses, Main Street small businesses in your local neighborhoods run by families with under 100 employees, and what SBA terms as micro businesses especially, which comprise over 85% of businesses in this country, those who are self-employed and have under 10 employees. So we are hopeful that that expansion and carve out with the recent, some people call it 3.5 funding, supports those small businesses. We recognize, however, that programs for funding the PPP is not enough. We at Small Business Majority would like to and have been in discussions with the Congresswoman's office and others to see the next stimulus address more funding by direct grants. In fact, our research has shown with small business owners, 92% of them support direct grants funding. And you've seen that with many major cities such as the city of Chicago and San Francisco and Cook County here in Illinois recognize the need for direct grant support rather than putting business owners in further debt. Many of them have existing debt that they still have to service. Many of them also are taking on additional debt with the federal aid that's being offered as well. So we have a large number, the majority of business owners that would prefer aid in that capacity. We at Small Business Majority actually have a campaign with over 5,000 organizations and small business owners and leaders who are supporting a bailout for small businesses. We're also supporting a proposal to limit mergers and corporate takeovers of many of these kind of larger small businesses and even the family small businesses from takeovers. We saw that was a loophole that happened in the last recession. And what that does is that is actually slowing down innovation. It causes great upheaval with millions of jobs lost from the small businesses, and it only serves to increase executive compensation. I want to add on, and I'm going to put it in the chat box here, to what Bo was saying earlier about additional resources for you, the small business owners. We have a resource on our website for some of the trainings that we're doing alongside the Small Business Administration every other Tuesday as well, providing updated facts. We also have a hub regarding what's happening policy-wise. Our venturize.org page helps you get loan ready and financially ready as well. And also I've typed in the State of Illinois Treasurer's Office has just injected, as of yesterday, $250 million additional dollars for those community banks that Bo was discussing earlier, and that's part of that $60 billion carve out that Congress intended to help support small businesses. So that I have put in the chat box for the treasurer's list of banks that are participating in that program as well. One last point is to please beware of predatory lenders, whether in person or online. Also, if you are approached by an individual or an online lender that purports to say they completed an application for you and could put you in front of the queue that Bo was talking about earlier, faster to get your PPP, it could be suspected fraud. Only those who are approved by the SBA as lenders for the PPP can do those loans for you. And nobody, even the SBA, as Bo will attest, will not be knocking on your door promoting the PPP and the EIDL loans for you as business owners. So we do want you to be aware of that as well. Or if somebody is asking you for upfront funding to complete a loan application for you, we are hearing stories between people charging $1,000 to $2,000, $2,500. Many of these small business owners are simply looking for loans of $30,000. please be aware that that these loans are not, there are no fees associated with it. We are talking with the Attorney General's office about this, and I've had discussions with them. So they are also aware that this is occurrence, and we would like to know if this has happened with you as small business owners as well. It's incredibly important, and we're hopeful for the next round of stimulus funding to support small businesses. We know many, especially women-owned business, are looking and starting to dip into their retirement accounts. And I know for the Congresswoman, retirement security is an extremely important and significant issue at the top of her agenda. So we want to protect those owners who are looking and are feeling really confused and distressed that they feel that they have to dip into their retirement accounts and their future wealth and savings. We want to prevent that by supporting them with the sustainability to weather this pandemic and thrive together with them. So thank you, Congresswoman.
Well, that's a lot of information. I hope some of you, is the information, Bo, available on your website? And is that true also for you, Geri, that people could get their information?
Yes.
And you put something in the chat?
I did, and our COVID resource page as well.
Good, so that you'll have a list of a number of places that you can go to. Well, I think we're ready for questions. Miguel?
Yes, Congresswoman, we have lots of questions here, and Andrew and I are trying to answer some of the more easier ones directly in the chat. But one of the ones that I wanted to bring to the group. One second, I have it right here, from Mr. Kovic, who is asking, I applied at Chase, received a denial, and I presume from a previous question this is about PPP. He received a denial this past Friday. I've called Chase. They told me to talk to my CPA. What can I do? So if there's any suggestions on that piece.
So from the standpoint of, the application process, it's hard to say from the specific instance of what you're discussing, but I think that a good tool for everyone to go to at a good reference point is the Treasury has a document that's how to calculate your maximum loan amount. So depending on what kind of business structure you may have, whether you're a sole proprietor or nonprofit, it's a great tool to go to that includes all the information that you may need to provide to secure a loan. That's really the only options are either you continue the process with the lender you're working with right now, or you seek another lender and try to work with them. At this point, I don't really have a lot of other recommendations except for, I guess, reaching out also to a small business development center where they can potentially help with guidance and advising on your particular situation, and hopefully get you to a situation where you can, the application will go through. So that's what I would recommend.
And Bo, to clarify, people can apply through multiple banks until they have an SBA approval, correct?
Yeah, there's nothing in the rules that say that they can't apply multiple times. Basically, the way the system will work is whichever application is successfully submitted first will be the one that will be approved, and then any other applications that are submitted subsequently will be rejected.
If I could ask a question, it's Jan Chakowski, and here's what should employers be using PPP to pay their employees now, whether or not they are going to work?
I mean, from my perspective, that's a business decision that they've got to take on. However, I think the key thing that would say yes, that would be prudent, is if you want to receive 100% forgiveness for that loan, you need to bring people on now if you're going to be able to spend over that 8-week period, at least 75% of the proceeds of that loan on payroll costs. So, that's going to be kind of a key question that each business owner needs to ask themselves. But, there's no requirement in the law that says that, if you don't have enough work for people to be full-time, it still doesn't mean that you can't have them on payroll full-time. It's just a matter of, from an SBA perspective, we're just looking at how much money you're spending of those proceeds that's on payroll costs, and what your full-time equivalent is at the end of that 8-week period when you're requesting forgiveness.
They have to keep in mind that 75% of the money that comes to them is going to have to be spent on payroll. So it may be a wise decision to be paying their employees now, it seems to me. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Miguel?
Yes. So next question would be, can you talk more about how long full employment must be in place beyond June 28th to qualify for forgiveness? So is there any requirement how long they have to be kept on? I guess that's for Bo.
So I'm not aware of any requirement beyond that 8-week period for which we're looking at forgiveness. Again, we're looking for additional guidance from the SBA policy folks and the Treasury policy folks to finalize the formal process. But as far as I'm aware of right now, there are no requirements beyond that 8-week period of forgiveness.
All right. Another one that I think will be good for you, Bo. My business didn't show enough profit to make for PPP more than a few $100s. What can be done to receive funds covering actual payroll? So I guess there's a question of if there's a profit requirement in the application.
So there is not. However, if you are a sole proprietor, or depending on how you file, the documentation that we're asking for may be the 1040 Schedule C, which is, and the line is, I forget which line it is, line 31, net profit amount. So depending on how your business is structured and what kind of expenses you claim on your tax returns, you may end up at a point where the profit is low or no profit, which then would result in you being unable to apply for the PPP because you don't have any profit that you're showing.
Do we have one for Geri?
Yeah, I think Geri, you can you can maybe answer this one. Also a PPP question. That's the topic of the night. It questions. But this question is from Steve, and he asks, I'm a sole proprietor and have been trying to apply for a PPP loan. My bank says that my checking account was not classified correctly. I've waited many days and still can't apply.
Well, I think it would be finding out what they mean by not classified correctly. What we often find with many sole proprietors is they sometimes commingle their funds with their personal account rather than setting up a separate business account. So I think understanding what that specifically means. I'm not sure if their bank account does not qualify, what exactly the aspects of that is. But one of the points that Bo made earlier is to better understand, because we do see this with a lot of sole proprietors, is not having a separate bank account, which held up their application as well, because they claim their income on their as pass through on their taxes, which is fine to do, but oftentimes they weren't advised along the way about a separate bank account for their cash flow. So I would actually contact one of the SBDC to find out what the bank meant or get some clarity.
What's an SBDC?
A Small Business Development Center that Bo mentioned earlier, one of our partners, and they're excellent. Those are actually paid staff that go through certification out of the SBA resources. But also find out from the lender, what did they mean by the bank account is not applicable for it. There are a lot of questions, and getting to understand what that means from that lender will help the business owner and the counselor at a small business development center or a women's business center like the Women's Business Development Center, better understand and help them prepare financially for that loan. It's the same way if you're applying for grants. We know there are a lot of grants out there as well. Being financially ready with your records, your bank accounts, most organizations, whether it's a lender or a grant organization, is going to want to see some sort of diligence to verify that you're been in operations. So you want to make sure that you are financially ready in preparing your records and your bank accounts. I don't know the specifics of what the bank meant by that their bank account was not ready. I can take a guess that what we're seeing and that many sole proprietors do not have separate bank accounts, or was not set up properly doing business as even in their own name. So that may have been a problem. Again, go back to your lender and find out about that, what they meant, what the exact point of reference was.
Miguel?
Sure. Okay. And maybe another one for you, Geri. I am a small business owner. This is from Michael. I am a small business owner who received no assistance, and I've had to vacate my space. I have 3 years left on my lease, but I'm a one-man operation and can't afford to go on there. And I have had to vacate. Can the landlord sue me?
Oh.
Yeah, we are getting a lot of questions about relief for particularly rent and mortgage and related to small businesses. We are working with our partners at the Chicago Civil Rights Lawyers Committee, who actually are now, we can refer them, and I can send that to you, Miguel. They are offering free counseling for business owners who actually are impacted by some of these legal issues, and can review the contracts and help them negotiate on some of these terms. Until we pass more sweeping federal legislation to address this, that is a resource that I could recommend, is the Chicago Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights. They're also working with the city of Chicago. I can share that resource with them. We've been in discussions with them about being that personal resources for those lawyers who are volunteering their time pro bono to help business owners in these very instances.
All right. Another question for whoever can answer it. Does a condominium association qualify as a small business?
Oh.
Sure. So usually condominium, there are those associations are typically nonprofits. So they could, in theory, be eligible to apply for the certainly for the economic injury disaster loan, just depending on the circumstances. That's not an ineligible type of organization. As far as the PPP, again, that's calculated by payroll. So the association would have to have some kind of payroll in order to apply for the program. And it would have to be a 501c3 likely organization.
Yeah, to add to that, we get a lot of questions about nonprofit status and who is eligible. And Bo's absolutely right. 501c3 nonprofits are eligible for the PPP. The C6s and C4s are not eligible at this time.
All right.
Right.
Bo, I think you touched on this a little bit, but someone is asking if you not spend 75% of the loan on payroll and you spend 50% of the loan on payroll, will that portion be forgivable?
So, yeah, so that's a question that we're looking for policy guidance on. I don't want to predict it, but the way that I read the interim final rule is that yes, there will be some kind of formula through which we'll determine the total amount of forgiveness. I think the way the rule says is that the amount of forgiveness, only the total amount, only at least 75% has to be payroll costs, and then there can be an additional 25% on other eligible uses that may also be forgiven. So my expectation is that when we get the guidance, there will be some kind of formula that lenders that the SBA can use in order to calculate what the total amount of forgiveness would be.
When is that expected, Bo?
My understanding is we're supposed to have that this week. I keep going to the Treasury website and updating my screen just to see every couple hours just to see if it comes through, because they're constantly updating all the policy guidance that.
Can individuals do that? Keep an eye on the guidance that are issued?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put the Treasury website where all this information resides on the in the chat so that people can see it.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Sure. Maybe this one's for you, Geri. A lot of the advice is to contact your lender. Chase has no way to contact them about my application. Is there some oversight of the banks requiring them to actively communicate about loans? They put us in a passive check, status check, but no response to questions.
Well, so for Chase, there's 4 stages as we understand it, in particular that bank. It may differ from other banks. So you should have gotten a status check on what stage you're in for the Chase Bank. What we do want to make sure that you understand the difference. There are some business owners who may have signed up, and I've spoken to some of them. They thought they signed up or applied for Chase or another larger bank when they actually were putting in their information for Q, for the lender to contact them. So you want to understand if you actually did submit your application, do you have the records of confirmation for that application? I've spoken with several business owners who thought that when they gave their information, because Chase is the one that they bank with, that meant that they were applying, which is quite different than actually submitting an application and receiving a confirmation number and letting you know what stage you're in. But as we said earlier, if you are not sure, please also, you could apply at other banks. We are hearing a lot more success stories from small business owners who have gone to their local community banks or credit unions to find that PPP funding as well. If you do get that and a quick turnaround for the PPP at another bank, just make sure if you do have an active application with another lender that you've let them know, so that you don't, SBA at the federal level is not seeing eventually 2 different applications. You just need to make sure that you're in communication with the other lenders and let them know that you're going to withdraw that if you do get PPP funding from a different lender.
Bo, is there still money for the second round of the Paycheck Protection Program?
Yes, there is. So as of, I wish I had new numbers as of today, but as of yesterday, we had run through about $52.2 billion out of the total $310 billion appropriation. So there's currently funds in the system right now, and I expect there to be for the coming days.
Thank you.
All right.
Miguel?
Yes, another question. This one is from Rita Walter. She'd like to know, she's had a long history with her bank, multi-year history. She has a small C corporation, but why do you need her credit score and social security number for a PPP loan?
So this is Bo. I can't really speak to the internal policies that individual lenders have in place. Each lender is going to require different information to basically validate what they feel they need in order to adhere to the internal policies that they have in place. So sorry, I can't answer that any better than that.
Geri, can you shed any light on that?
Yeah, Bo's right. All the lenders will have their own individual criteria on how they know their customers in order to better understand, whether this is a valid business, how well they're doing, They should not be pulling their credit scores. We are starting to hear stories. There are some banks that are pulling the credit scores. That hard pull is actually impacting their credit score and bringing it down. So please let us know, and please let Congresswoman's staff know if that is happening. We are trying to monitor that. My advice to the business owners, as you're dealing with your lender, ask them to do a soft pull. And that's not going to affect your credit score if they are saying this is the process. Work with them and say, I don't want my credit, a hard credit score pulled. That's going to pull your credit score down by a few points, and it will take a good 30 to 45 days for it to cycle back up. The danger of that in these times is we know that many of you have existing debt. We would like to advise you to don't forget to negotiate with those that you have existing debt with as well. Talk to your landlords, talk to your suppliers, talk to them about easing up on the receivables that you owe them as well. That will free up some capital for you and better manage your cash flow too. But it's because if that happens with your credit, that's going to be a domino effect for any other credit that you may need. Should you want to get, if another amazing product comes out of SBA or another bank that you want to take advantage of as well. So let the Congresswoman's staff know and let us know as well. We are starting to hear that slowly, those stories coming in regarding that. So I'm sorry to hear about that, but we will work with you with the Congresswoman's office to help monitor that.
All right. This one is probably for you, Bo. In the event that funds have been given back by larger publicly traded companies, will those funds later be put back into the pot for PPP to have access to, for small businesses to have access to?
Yes, in fact, they already have. We've taken about $2 billion already back into the system for this round of funding from businesses that returned the funds.
Okay.
I just want to clarify, this is unknown to many of us, snuck into the first round. I guess it was it in the it wasn't in the first CARES Act. Okay, there was a tax break that went to some very wealthy people. And so we are trying to recover that money. Is that the money we're talking about, Bo? Or no?
No, I think what people are referring to are some of the large companies that took or received a PPP loan and then later decided to return it for whatever reason they decided to return it.
Well, because they should, but okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, anyway.
Okay, you don't have to say that. I can say that.
But based on the funding that has been returned so far, that added about $2 billion to this period that we're working on.
Is there more to be had or no?
I don't know. I mean, I know, every day I think you see different people, different businesses being identified as part of that process, or who, there's some controversy around it, but I can't say what people are actually.
Okay, and just to know, the money that was given in the, I guess the first CARES Act that included tax breaks, there's a lot of discussion that in the second CARES Act that we want to repeal that and get that money back too. I don't know where it would go exactly, but for a more legitimate purpose. Anyway, go ahead, Miguel.
Sure. Next question is from Sarah. She says, I saw a rule that no single bank can now be more than 10% of loans. I assume that means by dollar amount. Are any banks close, and who is monitoring?
Yeah, sure. So I can address that. At this point, the total, as of yesterday, the loan volume that we had processed was about $52.2 billion. Of that, 75% was with lenders that had $10 billion or less in assets. 85% was banks that had less than $50 billion in assets. So you can see at this point, larger banks only have processed about 15% of the total loans. So I would say we're nowhere near that level of one particular bank meeting that.
Okay. Another question. When, and I think you answered this, Bo, but in your presentation, but when does the 8 weeks start for the PPP forgiveness? Does it start when I'm approved, or?
It's the date of initial disbursement, which will be within 10 days of SBA approving the loan, with full disbursement no later than 30 calendar days. Both of those are calendar days.
Okay.
Gail, I think we should probably just take one more.
Sure. Let me see. Are the businesses that are receiving the loans going to be public information?
Good question.
I do not know the answer to that at this time. It's a common question, but I don't have what the policy will be on that.
Well, as the Congresswoman, I'm going to try and make sure that that is the case. I think it's really important. You know, we want to protect privacy of people, but on the other hand, if these are public dollars that are going out, I think that it is fair for the public to have that information. So I'll try and track that one down. Let me just thank you. We've reached about an hour mark. And so I want to thank both Bo and Geri for really, I think, very helpful information, but also the resources that they're telling you about. Please take advantage of those. I know, for example, at the Women's Business Development Center, it's not just women that they will talk to. So if you want to call there, but those organizations are very, very, very helpful. You know, it's been, I think the things that have been disappointing to me that we tried to correct in a vote last week, for example, is that you know, there are a lot of people who are underbanked or, you know, have not taken out loans, don't have relationships with lending institutions. And that has made it really hard for people. And not surprisingly, it's often, you know, really small businesses and often minority, women owned, et cetera, who once again, somehow get to the back of the line. And that's why we wanted to set aside some money for community banks and for credit unions, for CDFIs, community development financial institutions, microloans, to really try and help people who even a small amount can make a big difference. So we're working hard. We're looking at many ways that we can provide assistance. The best way, of course, if we could find a vaccine for the coronavirus, that is happening. I mean, the research is happening. We've allocated a good deal of money, your taxpayer money, to help that happen, and there's research going on around the world. But in the meantime, we understand that if we really want the economy to come back, then people have to have some money in their pocket, that they're going to be able to buy things, that they're going to be able to go to work again, that small businesses are going to be able to thrive. So we, you know, welcome all of the suggestions, the questions. And I know our office is there to help. We should call Geri and Bo for information and just look at the list of all the resources that there are. I know there was a question I was on with the lawyers, the Chicago Bar Association. I was on the phone with today, and I know that there are lots of legal questions that are coming up, and we're trying to make sure that the bar associations have enough funds too to be able to respond to those questions. So thank you for being with us this evening. We'll do our best to continue to be able to respond with information and with personally, one by one, answering your questions. Again, it's Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. Feel free to call us. We have wonderful staff on hand to help you. So thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you both. Thank you, Terry.